A couple of weeks ago, 6 Americans were among 10 civilians of a Christian humanitarian medical team murdered in Afghanistan. Also included were 2 Afghans, 1 German, and 1 Briton. They were there because they believed in the sanctity of human life and health. Unfortunately, the footage I have been able to find on the internet only names 4 of the Americans and the Briton that was killed. Still, I believe it adequately chronicles the mission that all members of the team must have been vehemently dedicated to.
With these murders, the Taliban have shown us yet another example of the lengths to which they will go to advance their twisted ideology.
10 members of a Christian charity's medical aid team, including 6 Americans, killed, unarmed, unpaid, working for International Assistance Mission. They just finished up a 2-week assignment treating eye problems of villagers in a very remote part of northeastern Afghanistan when they were killed. Now, the Taliban has claimed responsibility.
The bodies, including 6 Americans, were returned to Kabul. They appear to have been killed execution style. Their remains will now be sent back home, except for one, Tom Little. He worked in Afghanistan for the last 30 years as an eye doctor. His wife said he wanted to be buried here.
It's a family decision. Our girls all felt that should happen, that he gave his life in Afghanistan.
51-year-old Thomas Grams was a dentist from Colorado. He had quit his practice to volunteer full-time, giving free dental care to impoverished children. His neighbor, Clark Cunningham, had told him to keep his head down.
He said, "Oh, don't worry. I'm there to help, not to hurt." And that was Tom Graham.
Glenn Lapp was a Pennsylvania nurse. The 40-year-old had helped victims of Hurricane Katrina and Rita. And 32-year-old Cheryl Beckett from Tennessee had been working in Afghanistan for 6 years, specializing in mothers and children's health care.
Also included on the medical team were Mariam Ali, 50, from Wardak, Afghanistan. Mariam Ali worked as a watchman at Noor's maintenance workshop since the end of 2007. He stayed guarding the vehicles in Nawar when the rest of the team walked over the pass into Nuristan. Daniela Bayer, 35, from Chemnitz, Germany. Daniela was a linguist and a translator in German, English, and Russian. She also spoke Dari and was learning Pashto. She worked for IAM between 2007 and 2009, doing linguistic research, and joined the eye camp so that she could translate for women patients. Brian Cardarelli, 25, Harrisburg, Virginia. Brian Cardarelli was a professional freelance videographer. Brian served a number of other organizations in Afghanistan, active in development and humanitarian efforts throughout the nation. Jawed, 24, from Panjshir, Afghanistan. Jawed was employed as cook at the Ministry of Public Health's eye hospital in Kabul and had been released from there in order to attend the eye camp. Besides being the team's cook, he also assisted with the dispensing of eyeglasses. And finally, Dan Terry, 63, from Janesville, Wisconsin. Dan came to Afghanistan in 1971. He had a heart for the rural areas of Afghanistan and worked for many years in Lawa Sarjigal. Dan specialized in relating to local communities and liaising with aid organizations and the government to improve services in remote areas.
These were selfless volunteers who devoted themselves to providing free and much-needed health care to Afghans in the most remote and difficult parts of your country.
They worked for a Christian aid group that provided eye care to ordinary Afghans, but the Taliban accuses them of preaching Christianity to Muslims. Among the dead were 6 American medics. Another has been named as British doctor Karen Wu. She had been set to get married later this month.
These men and women were in the region to deliver free medical care to impoverished Afghan villagers. They were doctors, dentists, translators, and technicians, and their mission was solely humanitarian and wholly independent from that of any government. Before their deaths, they had spent several days treating cataracts and other eye conditions in Nuristan province, At their next stop, they plan to run a dental clinic and offer maternal and infant health care. They were unarmed. They were not being paid for their services. They had traveled to this part of Afghanistan because they wanted to help people in need. They were guests of the Afghan people.
The family of Dr. Karen Wu, the surgeon shot dead in a suspected Taliban attack in Afghanistan, have described her as a true hero. Dr. Wu was among 8 foreign aid workers and 2 Afghan interpreters killed in an ambush on their way back from an eye clinic. Her family have denied allegations she'd been preaching Christianity. They said her motivation was purely humanitarian. She was, they said, an inspiration to everyone she met. Her friends and colleagues have also been paying tribute, one of whom is Angie Dixon.
I've never met anyone who was able to give so much in an unselfish way. I am so grateful I was given the chance for her to be in my life.
The group had been led by Dr. Tom Little, an American ophthalmologist who has spent 30 years working in the country. His wife Libby normally travelled with him. On this occasion, though, she was back in New York preparing for the birth of a new grandchild.
We felt that Jesus, as the one we follow, cared about people's lives. And that was enough. That was enough for us to go just do what we could for that. And he was surrounded by Afghans who would lay down their life for him because they saw that he really cared for the Afghan people. That's where we were called to as a family, and that's where he will be buried.
Little and his wife Libby spent most of the last 35 years in Afghanistan, throughout the Soviet invasion, the Civil War, and under the Taliban government.
Tom has been in pretty tight spots before, but it didn't deter his sense that this is what God made him for.
Little had invited Dr. Karen Wu to join him on the ill-fated trip to the Taliban-dominated province of Nuristan to provide basic medical care.
All she wanted to do was help. A lot of the time she would very much forget about herself because there were other people that needed assistance.
He gave his life, the best years of his life, to bring medical care to Afghan people. And he'll be buried in the Christian cemetery right there in Kabul.
Kabul is the place Tom and Libby Little called home for more than 30 years, raising 3 daughters while working for the International Assistance Mission, bringing free eye care to hundreds of thousands. In their latest project, Libby stayed here in Delmar to help their youngest daughter prepare for her first child.
And he went back to get going on this eye camp where they have just a window of opportunity to get into this very remote area where we've been invited.
An area Tom and his team knew well. Militants killed him and 9 others in Badakhshan province on their way home from the camp.
My husband was a man, an authentic person, and he really cared for people's eyes. And he felt that Jesus, as the one we follow, cared about people's eyes.
Libby feels a sense of comfort knowing Tom completed that final camp.
He did it well, and he didn't do it for himself. He did it for God's glory.
I asked Libby what she would say to the Taliban, whose spokesman says they killed Tom because he was spying and preaching Christianity.
I wouldn't say anything. They know that Tom and the team were doing a wonderful work.
Work the Littles celebrated during their 40th anniversary 2 weeks ago.
I feel that I've been given 40 wonderful years, and we've had a full, rich, wonderful life.
Libby doesn't know whether she will return to Afghanistan, but she's confident others will continue Tom's work.
Right now, it's just, I feel Jesus is saying, well done, well done. His work was done.
Wow. When I listen to Libby Little speak about this medical team that she usually traveled with herself, I get a feel for how the entire team must have felt about the sanctity of human life. That said, let's now turn our attention to some Afghan civilians who were killed by NATO forces in that same country about 2 weeks earlier.
There's no doubt innocent civilians died in this village in Helmand province. NATO say there's no evidence their forces caused the deaths of 52 civilians here.
A spokesman for the ISAF coalition said they had no confirmation of the reports of civilian casualties.
Now, Afghan President Hamid Karzai has blamed NATO forces for a recent airstrike that killed scores of civilians in the south of his country.
The international coalition deny it was them.
ټکان به پر دغه کېدله لکه پر دوی چې دا ټکان وسوله 200-300 متره پر دغه منطقه ټکان پر دوی سوي لا ولاکوي دوی راله بمبار پر موږ باندې وکړي لاس 15 کوره په دې ځای ننوتلي شي سوي دغه شهیدان راله کورس پکې ومشتي انسانان سرونه پښې نه وي لاسونه یې نه وه انسانان لکه پسه چې سره چاکې لړمنونه یې سره داسې سره چاودلي ولاړ وه بیا نارې د خدای د قرآن رویونه ولاړه وه پوستې ته خبر ورکړي چې زموږ انسانان تباه او برباد کړله تاسو ټاکو ټکان مه کوئ خیر بیا په دې شپه کې ټکان نه وسوله شی نه وسو
ټول مړي او ټپیان 250 کسه دي
دا په بار دغه خارجي حکومت دا خارجيان دغه را باندې وکړي کورز موږ په نظر خو دا کورز دا زموږ کلی به ګرده و دې ځای ته ورغلی دا زموږ د کلي څخه به یو 200 متر لیرې وو
چې د شوروي په وخت کې پر دغه ځای باندې نه طالب ټاکړی دی نه مجاهد ټاکړی دی دا داسې یو بېغمه ځای دی
په دغه کې ډېری د 12 کاله پورته تر 12 کلن د نارینه هلک پورته قسم په خدای دې چې ګرده پیدا کړي که بل هلک تر 12 کلن پورته هلک پکښې کله وو ګرده کوشنیان انجنې عجزې زما لور چې وه د یو نیم کال وه خورته مې د 3 میاشتو وه خپل مې راوکښه د ټکور ټکور ورسره
زما د کورنۍ چې زما دغه دا کار زوی دی نه کسه زما او د خپل د کورنۍ زموږ شهیدان سوه 4 کسه زما خپل د کورنۍ دي چې په کور کې قسم په خدای دی که د دغه دله لرم چې معنا درګاه خلاص وي چې یوه مې مور وه معنا یوه مې کورواله وه 2 مې لوڼې وې معنا 15 کسه د دغه زما دا کار زوی دی چې 15 کسه د دغه د کوره څه وتلي دي چې زما خور وه یا مې خوریان
د باندې راوتلې وه هلته پرته وه کوچنی یې په غېږ کې وو د 6 میاشتو کوچنی یې په غېږ کې وو هغه یې پر دغه ځای ویشتلی وو دا پر دغه تی باندې ویشتلې وه پرته وه
دلته کورنۍ انسانان ډېر راټول سوي وه باره خو د ساحه وه په منطقه کې وه سوري و شانته سره ناست وه د کورو کوچنیان په دغه کور کې وه چې دغه بم و کرز و چیش و دا پر ولوېدی دغه تباه او برباد کړله
Terror has no religion. And these acts are rejected by people all over the world, including by countless Muslims here in our country, in Afghanistan, and everywhere else. As President Obama said in Cairo, the Quran teaches that taking one innocent life is like killing all humanity, and saving one innocent life is like saving all humanity.
No, I think if people were to actually go back to the tape of Brother Jeremiah Wright, the same way we went back to the tape of Sister Shirley Sherrod, you would say, you see, God condemns America when America kills innocent people. There's nothing theologically wrong with that. God condemns every nation, Ethiopia, Russia, Guatemala, Brazil, South Africa, when those nations kill innocent people.
Tell our Commander-in-Chief, President Obama, to stop the civilian killings in Afghanistan. We can disagree over the occupation and the reasons for it, but we must not tolerate further civilian killings. Tell him that we don't want the effect of the cause, be it divine judgment, karma, the equal and opposite reaction, whatever you believe. Take the time to sign the petition.
Our villages are not where the terrorists are. And that's what we kept telling the US administration, that the war on terrorism is not in the Afghan villages, not in the Afghan homes. Respect that. Civilian casualties are undermining support in the Afghan people for the war on terrorism and for the relations with America. How can you expect the people who keep losing their children to remain friendly? And that's a moral question as well. We have to be morally on a much higher platform in order for us to win the war on terrorism.
And do you worry that the U.S. has not met that standard? Have they not met their own moral standard?
The U.S. has not met that standard in Afghanistan. The United States must stand on a much higher moral platform in order for us together to win this war.